So we'll talk about how the Bulls lost to the New Orleans Pelicans and the referees, despite Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan combining for 56 points. We'll get into all that and more right after this.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. That's the one and only Pat, the designer, host and creator of the Windy City Breeze. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central. Pat, that was some bad officiating there, brother.
It was. There was definitely some bad officiating that took place tonight. I think that they should all be fired. I think that they should be in the unemployment line. The only thing they should be allowed to referee is the shoe size on a child's foot at Foot Locker. They probably would still get that wrong. And I don't know who the black dude was out there, but he got a mechanic's hairline like he'd been underneath a 68 Camaro for the last 5 years. And the carburetor's the problem. So, yeah, they sucked. But at the end of the day, they're not the reason the Bulls lost this game. They helped.
They helped.
They're not the reason that the Bulls lost this game. And I'm not to say I'm going to ignore the officiating, right? There's some people that are like, officiating is an excuse. It's not. Like, if they call too many fouls on one side versus another, it's going to help them get into the game.
Just to add some color to that, the free throw discrepancy in this game, 36 free throws for the New Orleans Pelicans to 18 for the Chicago Bulls. And there's about another 10 that should have been called for the Bulls that Stacey King, they went back on the replay and looked at closely. But go ahead, Pat, keep cooking.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But at the end of the day, right, like the discrepancy on the rebounding battle is an issue. The discrepancy on second chance points is an issue. The discrepancy on just playing disciplined basketball. The Bulls, first off, they're jumping out of their Nikes anytime the Rock comes out there and lifts his eyebrow. They're jumping at basically every pump fake known to man. I do have issues with Billy Donovan how he coached this game at going down the stretch of this thing, because I don't know how the heck you don't have Patrick Williams guarding Brandon Ingram at all towards the end of this game, or just in the game in general, maybe to guard Zion a little bit. You know what I mean? But I mean, at the end of the day, there was a lot of things that the Bulls did to me that caused them to lose this game. But you can't look at the officiating and say that there was some issues. They should be looked at. They shouldn't be. I mean, they shouldn't be allowed within any 100 miles of a basketball court after what we saw tonight from that officiating crew, especially Mr. Hairline.
For sure. One of the more disheartening plays of today was with 18 seconds left on the clock. DeMar down by 3, and that turnover, bro. When that ball, and he knew it too. You could, if you looked at the look on his face when that ball slipped through his hands, he knew it was gone. And yeah, bro. There was a table that may or may not have survived the game tonight. Is all I'm gonna say.
I put all my expensive stuff on my tables now, so I'm less likely to flip them because I'm not going to flip this mic. This mic is very expensive. But again, right, like that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about with the discipline. That's what I'm talking about with the miscues. That's what I'm talking about with, like, the Bulls seemed off all night to me. The Bulls at no point tonight. I mean, listen, you played a game, and here's the thing at the end of the day. Defensively, the Bulls were great. There's people that are gonna pop up and talk about the Bulls couldn't slow this guy down. They couldn't slow down BI. The Bulls played defense. BI was terrible for 3.5 quarters.
I was about to say the first 3 quarters, the defense was solid.
Zion Williamson did nothing.
That fourth quarter,
and it's just and listen, it's because Billy Donovan sold out, right? Because you needed some offensive. I think, right, you get Javante coming down, he gets the oop at the end of the quarter, and then they start off the quarter getting some tough calls that put the Bulls behind the 8 ball. But then at the end of it, right, like you see them go down on the other end, knock down a 3. They get the and one with BI. All of these things start, or not the and one. They get the 3-point foul call with BI, and he goes to the line to shoot 3, and you see him put in Dragic and Caruso. That's more of an offensive lineup. You knew that there was going to be less defense in that fourth quarter as soon as you saw the offensive lineup come in. But to me, right, like the thing is, you got yourself to a point where you were winning. You got yourself to a point where it was a close game again, where I think we went down 7 at first and we got it back to 3, and then we tied again and we take the lead by 2. At that point, get Patrick Williams back in there. Yeah. Try and figure out a way that you're going to get the guy in there who's going to be able to come out and play defense a little bit more, maybe get more of a defensive lineup back in there. Not say you sell out and you go only defense, but I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, the part that irritated me most about this game is just like the Bulls were off by like this much, and it's the first night that we've been able to say all season, right? Like this is a game the Bulls should have won. It's the first night we've been able to say all season, like, no, you had rest, you had your full slate of players. Andre Drummond looked poor. Oh, and by the way, Vooch, Valanciunas owns you. Like that's your pops. Like he cooked you all night long.
I mean, Valanciunas is what kept them in this game in the first half. Now, I will say this. He only scored 2 points in the whole second half.
Fact.
So you're saying all night. You're saying all night. It wasn't all night. He just really did his damage in that first half, and it just was bad. Now, Vooch did come on in the second half himself, hitting some big shots for us. He ends up with 18 points, but it was a lot of things that went left in this game, a lot of things that they can tighten up. They didn't capitalize. And I said it in my halftime hangout over on Bull Central, is that the Bulls went into the halftime down by 2, and Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and C.J. McCollum combined for 2 points.
Yeah.
And so it was always like, okay, when's the sleeping giant going to wake up? And they woke up at the right time. Zion just started all of a sudden realize, hey, by the way, where's Patrick? Oh, he's not out here. I'm bodying everybody.
Yeah.
Pushing people around. Just getting to the rim at will. And then Brandon Ingram, him and DeMar, it was nice to see. It was fun to see. I won't lie, for a while of them just back and forth on possession, making baskets and plays and things like that. But at the end of this, like, the Bulls just did not play mistake-free enough to really seal this victory. The refs absolutely played a part. Rebounding absolutely played a part. Everything played parts. But the Bulls still were in position to win this game. But just sloppy passes all throughout this game, just passes that were just a little bit off target that made the possession change from what could have been a wide open drive to the lane to, hey, just that split second of now bobbling the ball, it allowed the defender to get in position, and that hurt this team a lot as well.
And you need your guys to step up that are the others, right? Like that's kind of what I look at when you look at this game as a whole. And I'm sure we're going to dive into the specifics of the game, each side, refs, all that stuff, right? But when you look at the other guys outside of Zion Williamson, C.J. McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, 21, 13. Excuse me, 21 and 13. Herb Jones, 17 and 4. Marshall 9 and 5, Alvarado 7 and 3, Hernan Gomez 8 and 3. That's what I was looking for tonight. Like the Bulls still end up having a nice bench output production wise, right? Because Goran Dragic had 14 points, but everybody else kind of really didn't give you much. You didn't get much from Andre Drummond. Granted, first game back, he didn't give you. I'm not gonna hold his feet to the fire off of his first game back, but DJJ 5 and 2. Again, foul trouble. I don't know what you're gonna do with that. Javonte Green 2 and 2. Caruso. Like there was a lot of ticky-tack fouls that probably changed the way that you're playing, that you're talking about defense. But at the end of the day, this team didn't do enough for itself to put us in a position to win. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan were playing really well in the first half. Now, Zach LaVine in the second half, down the stretch, I got some issues with. But, I think for the most part, they played really well in the first half of this game. And you were still down 2 going into the half. That's a problem.
And I got to disagree. You said the Bulls didn't put themselves in position. They were in position to win this game. They just didn't win it. The execution wasn't there. And a lot of things played a part in that. But this team was in a position a few different times to win this game, tie the game, whatever you want to call it. They having a 4-point lead with like 2.5, 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and everything they did not play when they needed a defensive stop, right? They played solid defense throughout this whole game. But when this team absolutely needed a defensive stop to stop the bleeding in that fourth quarter, one did not come at all. And we're used to seeing some magic happen for the Chicago Bulls. We're used to seeing something. And it did happen a little bit. The Bulls being down 5 at one point, then turn it around and being up by 4 with like 2 minutes left, going on like, I think it was like a 17-6 run at one point in the fourth quarter. Yeah. All that is fine and dandy. But when the game was going back and forth as far as every possession, a different team was taking the lead in the fourth quarter, the Bulls did not get that defensive stop that they so badly needed. Now, we'll continue talking about this game in the next segment. But first, got to talk to you guys about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Well, how does it work? You add your job and then the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. And of course, terms and conditions apply.
Thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen every day. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most, of the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insight only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely. Well, Pat, one of the things that we need to talk about, you mentioned it a little bit. There's been a lot of talk about it already on Twitter and comments and things like that. Is the coaching of Billy Donovan. There was a couple of decisions that I liked down the stretch of this game. There was a couple that I took some umbrage with. The first one was not having Patrick Williams out there in crunch time in the fourth quarter. That's a huge one. One that I did like, though, was swapping out Dragic for Ayo Dosunmu in the fourth quarter. I think that would have been, I think that even says more about why you need Patrick Williams out there for more defense then. Yeah. But the way that Dragic was cooking as far as like getting people open, getting people easy shots, hitting some key shots for himself down the stretch, I like that part of it. But what did you think about Billy Donovan's coaching overall in this game? And then we can talk specifically about that last stretch in the fourth quarter as well.
I think for the most part, it was a well-coached game, right? Like the Bulls were I think that there's times where like we want to blame the coach and it just comes down to the players, right? Like Billy Donovan can't make them catch the pass that's coming. I think the one thing that drives me nuts, and I can't even just say it's a Billy Donovan thing, though. This is just the modern NBA. I don't know when it became okay to just launch passes cross court, because I remember growing up playing basketball, like that was the one thing that you absolutely could not do. Like cross court passes made no sense because people like stick their hands up and they tip the ball and they can steal it. You know, like we see every single night. Like, I don't know why that's a thing all of a sudden in today's league, but for some reason, right, like there's a ton of cross-court passes, and I think that gets the Bulls in trouble. They're doing a lot of drive and kick. They're trying to get downhill, and there's so many times where I think for the most part, Billy does a good job, but when it got to that crunch time, I thought Billy didn't adjust quick enough out of it, right? Like, you were in this game. It's like you said, you were in this game. When I say the Bulls didn't put themselves in a position to win this game, right? This is a game they should have walked away with. This is a game to me that you saw Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, and Brandon Ingram all be terrible. You should have been able to put this game away in the first half and had guys sitting on the bench by the end of it. And I think just those little miscues, those little things, those little you didn't put enough emphasis on the pass, or you didn't come off a screen hard enough, or you didn't come off, you know what I mean? Like, those are the things that irritate me about this team, and I think those are the things that we saw down the stretch. But I think Billy did a good job getting the right guys in, right? Like, when we needed some offense, and he went with that offensive lineup that was DeMar, Levine, Caruso, Dragic, and I think DJJ was in there at the 5, maybe.
Yeah, because he wasn't using Drummond, who Drummond only played 12 minutes in the game.
He wasn't using Drummond. So I think it was DJJ in there at the 5. That got you back in the game. That got you a lead. That was an offense that absolutely worked for the Chicago Bulls. But I think that he never adjusted back to, okay, now we're in this game offensively. Now let's get the defensive lineup back on the court. Let's get the lineup that maybe can slow down Brandon Ingram, can slow down Zion Williamson, who started getting it going a little bit in the fourth as well, right? Like, you never got that lineup back in the game, because I'll tell you, no matter what you do, that lineup out there probably has a defensive rating of 130 with the guys that were out there. Caruso's bringing it down quite a bit. And you saw it, right? DeMar he doesn't try on defense a lot of times. And that's what we saw out there to me in that stretch. So I think for the most part, Billy had a good game, but when we needed him to have his best part of the game, he didn't have that.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the difference in some of the things that you critique you're gonna hear about Billy Donovan a lot is like the in the game adjustments sometimes aren't always there. Game to game, he makes some really good adjustments. If you look at just for example, the first game against Toronto, the second game, this team was completely different and prepared and came out with a different game plan. But not having P. Will out there in the fourth, especially once you realize Brandon Ingram was cooking, I don't understand. There's no way that I can excuse not bringing him back in, especially he didn't have foul trouble. P. Will only one foul call on him in this game, which is crazy considering how much the Pelicans got to the line. Patrick Williams with 4 blocks, set a career high for him in blocks, 4 blocks in this game. Yeah. And there was a time even P. Will, and the thing that I like is to see P. Will make adjustments within the game. Like that once he tried to take it up, and it wasn't strong one time and it got blocked, he literally took it right back up and dunked it hard. And I like to see P. Will make those type of adjustments. But P. Will in this game, like when I would love to see the on-off once it's all said and done and it comes out for this game for P. Will on the court versus off the court, because Zion, he guarded Zion well. Not great, especially not in the second half, but great. I mean, solid throughout the whole game, great in the first half. And then the times he was on Brandon Ingram, that we saw the difference in Brandon Ingram only being 109 pounds and Patrick Williams being, 215 now. Yeah. We saw the difference in that. Brandon Ingram could do nothing with Patrick Williams when he was on him. So it's just really weird that Billy Donovan didn't realize that and put Patrick Williams back in the game when Ingram started cooking us, man.
And it's weird because it's like these are the moments where you feel like Patrick Williams is starting to build some confidence. You feel like he's starting to do some really good things. I mean, early in that game, you saw him go out there and be able to defend Brandon Ingram really well. He was switching really well. I think he got a block on all of the major names. I think he got a block on McCollum. He got a block on Zion. He got a block on Ingram, and he got a block on what's buddy? Marshall off of that actually a good defensive play by DeMar DeRozan after he turned the ball over. It's like a good defensive play after he turned the ball over. But you would think that he's building confidence up, and it's like, hey, I'm having one of my best defensive games. And yeah, I will say Zion started to get into him a little bit in that second half, but it's Zion Williamson. Like, what are we expecting? Is Alex Caruso or Javonte Green going to do a better job on him? And even if it is, right, like I said during my live call of the game, I would have absolutely had P. Will on Brandon Ingram defensively, and you let Zion do what he's going to do. Because you know what? Brandon Ingram, I worried about killing me from the three-point line. If we want to have a battle of the twos, I've got DeMar DeRozan on my team. I'm going to win that battle. So I thought that down the stretch, Billy didn't want to, again, just took too long to adjust to it. You never saw P. Will, too long. He never got back in. You never saw P. Will get back into that game. I like the lineup he put out there in the beginning, but you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving. You got to keep adjusting. And if you're not, like you saw the Pelicans adjust 3-4 times at the end of that game.
Yeah. Well, it left a lot to be desired, but I think one thing is that with a lot of time off that they do have, the Bulls have their longest stretch of the season without a game, which is crazy to think that 4 days is your longest stretch without a game during the season. But hopefully they just work on things. I want to see this team come out firing on all cylinders because we're going to need it during this stretch overall. We have Denver coming up next on Sunday?
Yeah. The one thing I will say that a lot of people probably don't pay attention to, right, is when you have a schedule like this during the season, you're not practicing.
Yeah, I mean, they said
there's a lot of stuff that like you're seeing on the court, and you're like, why isn't this getting better? Why they're not practicing? They're doing shoot around and walkthroughs, but they're not practicing. So in this 4-day stretch, Denver's at home too, right?
Yeah, it's at home. It's the last.
So they'll probably be practicing tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and then I'll probably like not practice the day before the game. But
yeah, I mean they've been home all this week since from Monday till the game on Sunday. That's a whole week of being home in Chicago. So yeah, they're getting some practices in. They do have after Denver, they go to New Orleans. Hopefully we get our revenge back like we got our revenge back against Toronto. And then we have another 2-game home stretch against Orlando and Boston. And then we go on the road for 6 straight games. 6 straight games after that. So take advantage of the rest where you can. Get ready. It reminds me of the old circus trip. I know we don't do the circus trip anymore, but that used to always be a crazy time in the Bulls schedule.
It used to be fun because like, there was something different. I remember being a kid and just being like, man, like I'm going to sleep watching Bulls basketball. This is pretty cool. Like that was fun for me. Like just like, all right, I'm laying down. It's 9:30. It's the second quarter. I'm gonna be up for a while.
Fair enough. So before we end the show, Pat, what are some of the things you would like to see the Bulls work on? We talked about they don't always get a lot of chance during the season to have practice, especially when it's this type of schedule. What do you want to see the Bulls work on so they can come out against Denver look a little bit better?
You have to. Here, the big thing for me with the Bulls is that, again, another game. We're 12 games into the season now, 13 games into the season.
13 games into the season.
And another game of offensive droughts. Another game of 2 minutes that allow a 9-0 run, 3 minutes that allow a 8-0 run, 7-0 run. Like, they got to cut that down or you're going to get beat by a lot of teams that you're supposed to beat. And for me, right, like you have to figure out some offensive sets. You have to figure out some offensive things that can be your go-to, right? It can't just be DeMar coming through with the turnaround jump shot because even tonight, right, you saw a little bit of the Pelicans running what Toronto ran at DeMar, and it worked for the most part. And then, they kind of went away from it because Zach LaVine started knocking down his shot and stuff like that. But teams are going to run that double team. Somebody outside of just DeMar DeRozan has to be your option when you're going through those scoring droughts, or you have to have a set ready to go. You have to have some kind of offensive game plan ready to go for, hey, we're not knocking this down. Let's go back to something that we know is going to work. That's what I want to see them working on.
Hey, the thing is, and this is what kind of irritates me sometimes with Billy Donovan is that when we do have the scoring droughts, I don't understand why we don't go to a pick and roll. Like they run a lot of screens and then try to like do 3-point shots off screens. But when you have a player like Vooch, hell, when you have Andre Drummond, hell, even Patrick Williams, at times when you're having these scoring droughts and you just need to get a bucket, we very rarely go to the simple, tried and true pick and roll. And I know that may sound simple, it may seem like an oversimplification, but it's a big part of basketball for a reason because off pick and rolls, especially if you have players moving off the ball, on top of that, you usually can create something pretty nicely, an easy look at the rim or something to kind of just get that rhythm and to take the top off that basket. And we don't really go to that in those times, and I wonder why.
You know what? I'll say this, right? I think absolutely on Billy Donovan. He doesn't go to that enough. And I think it's something simple, especially with a guy like Vooch who can catch it off the pick and roll, do that little spin and put the float up and cash that mug out. But tonight was a night where even though poor officiating, the Bulls allowed the officiating to get into their heads. And I saw moments where
shout out to Vooch for flicking off the referees too.
I was dying laughing. I don't know if it was the referee or Alvarado. I'm assuming it was the ref though, but they were both in the vicinity. But at the end of the day, right, like you can't allow that to get in the head to the point where you're not cutting hard. Because there was pick and rolls that was coming in those moments or pick and pops, whatever. They were pick and rolls. And Vooch just wasn't cutting to the basket. Like he would set the screen, come off of it, and they called a moving screen on him. And then next when he comes down, they set the screen, they do the same thing. But it's just you're not going quick enough. You're not cutting hard enough. You're not being, again, simple hustle things that you should be able to do. And then, right, even the passing on the pick and roll. How many times have we seen a pass get tipped just trying to get it into the hands of Vooch off a pick and roll? Like those are the things to me that you really need to focus in on and lock down as you go into you have 4 days. Like let's get this locked down in practice because those are a lot of the turnovers are coming from this season.
For sure. Positivity note. Well, let me ask you this. I'll throw it to you. I kind of talked about this over on CBC. the way that Goran Dragic has played, the way that Javonte, Derrick Jones Jr., and their energy has meant something to the Bulls, when Kobe White does come back, how many minutes do you think Kobe's? Do you think he's still going to be getting the 21 minutes he's been averaging so far this season?
I think Kobe's got a spot because your only offense off of your bench is the 36-year-old dude.
It's not, I wouldn't say that's the only offense. You also have a big man down there averaging 10 points per game. But
Drummond hasn't been back. But yeah, but for the most part, most of your offense off of your bench has been the 36-year-old guy, and you want to have somebody else that can score off of your bench. It's definitely not going to be Alex Caruso based on how the beginning of the season is looking. And really, right, like until you get Lonzo back, you're really just not going to have that other guy that go out there and give you that offensive that you can guarantee will give you that offensive output. Like Javonte has a game where it's like 17 points, but then like tonight he's got 2.
Well, I also want to say this, though, is that when we're talking about offense, I also look at Goran as somebody who puts other people in a better offensive position to where they can score. That's why we see the days of having 40 points off the bench without Kobe White being there. So I don't necessarily see, not to say that Kobe isn't going to have any role at all, but I don't think the minutes are going to be what they were because the offense off the bench just rolls so much better with Goran out there.
I think I'm not even saying I think that's an asset for the Bulls. Now Kobe's got to knock down the shots, right? But to me, the fact that Goran just find dudes open. Like dudes they literally look like Muggsy Bogues in Space Jam. I caught it. And like the ball just being in their hands. DJJ had no idea that Goran was throwing him the oop. Both times he threw it to him. He's like, the ball just showed up. I made a layup. But I think that's the thing that speaks to me seeing Kobe get more time off of the bench because there's going to be times where Kobe's just moving around and he's going to get the ball and he's going to be open. I think he becomes more of that 2 guard, more of that shooter, more of that guy that's just cutting to the lane and finding himself with the ball in his hands. That's what I want to see Kobe being and just being consistent, honestly. So for me, right, I just don't see anybody in this lineup that I'm hard pressed to say, right, like DJJ is getting center minutes right now, and he was getting the minutes because Andre Drummond wasn't out there. I think you're going to see a switch up of Javonte and DJJ, and it's honestly going to be whichever one of y'all is playing the best today. That's who's going to get some take.
See, I think that I don't know. I think everything moves because you have Goran and Caruso who can play the guard positions. You have Derrick Jones Jr., Javonte who can hold down the forwards, and Drummond at the 5. I think that I get it in theory saying that but Kobe hasn't been that this season. Kobe is having career lows in every aspect of his game so far.
Oh, yeah.
And so if that continues, I don't know even if having the potential and threat of Kobe, like, because it's not being realized. We can say all day what the threat of Kobe and what he could do, but it's not happening. He has not been giving that. Yeah. And the things that he has been giving that's been solid for Kobe White, his help defense has been much better. His passing has been much better. But those are all things that you get other places more consistently and better.
Yeah, you got guys that give you that for the most part consistently. No, I mean, listen, I can see Kobe not getting back in just for the fact that he's always hurt. Yeah. And you don't want to mess up the consistency of your bench. But at the same time, right, like, I think you have to try and find something else offensively off your bench. Drummond coming back definitely helps with that, right? Like if Drummond comes back and he's giving you 9 points or he's giving you 10 points, that makes a big difference off your bench. But like, there's too many. I think there's enough nights where you have DJJ with 5 points, where you have Javonte Green with 2 points, where you have Caruso with no points, where you can say Goran Dragic is basically your only offense off your bench outside of Drummond. And most of the time when Drummond's getting his buckets, it's off of a Goran Dragic feed. So that's why I say, like, I think this bench gets a real boost no matter who comes back to it when Lonzo comes back. But I will say this, and this is kind of going as we getting up out of here, like, you got to give me a little bit more, Io. I love the defense. I love what you've been doing this season, but I'm seeing a lot of these 7-point games with 4 assists. You got to give me a little bit more, my boy.
I mean,
need a little bit more. Need a little bit more.
Fair. That's fair. But all right, Pat, you got anything left, brother?
Nah, man. Bulls take the L. It's 6-7. The part that sucks is now we got to sit and talk about this for the next 4 days.
Well, luckily, we only have one more day to talk about this.
Well, true, yeah. But you know what I mean? And like this is the part where it's gonna be on Twitter and all of that, where it's like, oh God, the Bulls are evil. They're going to be awful this season. Like, I get you. Now it's enough games into where it's like, all right, we can start forming a few opinions here. I'll allow a couple. But follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. Follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and rocking with us, man.
All right, you can follow me at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. And thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matters the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Pat the Designer, I'm Haize. This is Locked On Bulls. We out this mug. Peace, y'all.
Yeah.